Cape Verde is often introduced with the easiest image: bright water, pale sand, resort hotels, and a horizon that looks almost too calm to question. But zoom out, and the country starts to change. These islands sit in the Atlantic, far enough from the West African coast that the ocean itself becomes part of the national story. The nearest mainland, Senegal, is roughly 570 kilometres east. Lisbon is closer than Lagos. Cape Verde is officially called Cabo Verde, an archipelago of 10 main islands, 9 of them inhabited, scattered across open water. No single ferry connects them all. Getting from one island to another takes planning, cost, and time. That separation is not just a logistical detail. It shaped how communities developed, how language split into island varieties, how people learned to look outward. The islands are divided into 2 groups, the windward Barlavento in the north and the leeward Sotavento in the south. The Barlavento includes São Vicente and Mindelo, its port city. The Sotavento includes Santiago, where the capital Praia sits on a plateau above the sea. Praia holds the government, the largest population, and the daily rhythm of a country that is African by location, Atlantic by formation, and Creole by identity. Cape Verde was uninhabited when Portuguese navigators arrived in the 15th century. What grew here was not a transplanted European colony in the simple sense. It was a new population, a new language, a new culture built from African and European roots in the middle of the ocean. That origin still runs through the country. The beach is real, but so is everything the beach does not show. Once the islands are no longer just a vacation image, the next question moves from the map to the street. The map explains the distance, the street explains what that distance produced. Praia is Cape Verde's capital, on the island of Santiago, which holds most of the national population. It does not look like a resort. It looks like a city doing the practical work of holding a country together, with roads, people and institutions all converging in one place. Mornings here begin with shared taxis, school uniforms in the flow, cafe counters already busy. This is the rhythm of a working capital. Santiago is the most populous island in the archipelago, and Praia sits at its southern tip. The city grew as an administrative centre, a port, a place where islands connected to a wider world. Portuguese is the official language, used in schools, government and formal writing. It arrived with colonisation and stayed as the backbone of public life. But on the street, between neighbours and at the market, the dominant language is Kriolu, Cape Verdean Creole. It is not a simplified version of Portuguese. It is a language that developed across the islands over centuries. Kriolu absorbed influences from West African languages, Portuguese and the pressure of Atlantic isolation. It carries things Portuguese does not carry here: humour, intimacy, and the memory of people who built something in a place they did not choose to arrive. When a shopkeeper shifts from one language to the other, that shift is information. It signals closeness or distance, or the difference between a transaction and a conversation. Cape Verde's diaspora, spread across Portugal, the Netherlands, the United States and Senegal, has carried Kriolu outward. It is spoken in communities that left the islands generations ago and sung in music that has found audiences far from the archipelago. Back in Praia, the remittance shops and phone transfer counters are easy to miss, but they are part of the street's economy. Money moving back from Lisbon, Boston, Rotterdam, families staying connected across water. The bread cooling at a bakery window, the fish being wrapped at the market, the fabric seller adjusting a display in the afternoon wind. The taxi driver at the same corner every morning. This is what a country's identity looks like when you stop looking for the postcard version. It is not hidden. You can read it in the language, in the rhythm, and in the everyday work happening on streets and in homes where people are already living, not arriving. But identity is not only spoken, it is also shaped by what the land allows and what it refuses. Identity is not only spoken, it is also shaped by what the land allows and what it refuses. Cape Verde sits in the Atlantic, surrounded by ocean on every side, and yet fresh water has always been one of the country's most pressing daily questions. The same geography that makes the islands beautiful also makes them dry. Most of the archipelago receives very little rainfall. Wind moves constantly across exposed ridges and flat coasts. The volcanic rock beneath the soil does not hold water easily, so the ocean does not solve the problem. It frames it. On the island of Sal, the image is familiar: manicured resort lawns, swimming pools, guests walking toward white sand. But look just beyond the hotel fence line and the land changes abruptly. Dust, scrub. Flat, wind-scoured terrain with almost no shade. The greenery inside the resort did not come from the landscape. It came from infrastructure, desalinated seawater, pumped, stored and directed where investment decided it should go. Water on Sal is managed, purchased and moved. Without that system, the resort image does not exist. The same logic applies in towns and villages across the archipelago. Water containers are a common sight. Tanks on rooftops, delivery trucks on narrower roads. Communities developed habits around managing what they have. Wind is the other constant. On the windward coasts, waves and salt air shape everything from architecture to agriculture. Farmers on many islands learned early that exposure matters. What you plant, where you plant it, and how you hold the water once it arrives are decisions shaped by terrain, not preference. And then there is Santo Antão. If Sal reads as flat and arid, Santo Antão reads as the opposite, though both are part of the same country facing the same scarcity pressure. Santo Antão's interior rises steeply, and the mountains catch cloud moisture from the trade winds. The result surprises many people who associate Cape Verde only with dry heat: green. Roads here switch back on themselves repeatedly before reaching the valley floors. Farming is physical and deliberate. Water is directed, not assumed. Terraces hold the soil in place against erosion. Irrigation channels cut into hillsides over generations carry water to crops that could not survive on rainfall alone. What connects Sal and Santo Antão is not their appearance. It is the underlying logic. Both islands operate around the reality of scarce freshwater in a country surrounded by salt. One solved the problem through tourism capital and desalination infrastructure. The other solved it through terrain advantage and generations of agricultural knowledge. Both solutions are visible if you look. The postcard version of Cape Verde does not show either system, but both systems are what make the postcard possible. And yet, after the dry ridges and resort edges, another Cape Verde appears where the land suddenly turns vertical and green. What happens when the same country that looks dry from the air begins to sound like music from a port? The dry ridges and green valleys are not the end of Cape Verde's story, they are where the next part begins. São Vicente is smaller than Santiago, and its terrain is stark. But its main town, Mindelo, has been one of the most culturally significant ports in the Atlantic world for over a century. During the Age of Steam, Mindelo was a coaling station, a refueling stop between continents. Ships came from Europe, West Africa, the Americas. That traffic did not just move cargo from port to port, it also carried people, language, and memory across the same routes. Out of that movement, a distinct identity began to take shape, one that Cape Verde still carries today across its islands and daily life. Morna is the musical genre most associated with the islands. It is slow, melodic, and built around longing, the kind of feeling that forms when a place is beautiful but hard to stay in. It is sung in Kriolu, the language that already contains the whole history of distance inside it. Cape Verde produced one of the most recognised voices in African music of the 20th century. Cesária Évora was born in Mindelo, performed barefoot on stages across Europe, and brought these islands to audiences who had never heard of the archipelago. She's not the whole story, but she's one of the clearest pieces of evidence that a small country can carry itself outward through sound. Cape Verde has one of the highest emigration rates relative to population of any country in the world. Over generations, Cape Verdeans settled in Lisbon, Rotterdam, Boston, Providence. The diaspora is not a footnote, it is a second geography mapped across neighbourhoods, storefronts and family networks far from home. A parallel Cape Verde living in different time zones, sending money home, returning for festivals, keeping Kriolu alive in kitchens far from the Atlantic. The port in Mindelo still operates. Boats move between islands. Ferries carry passengers, cargo, and the everyday connections that hold an archipelago together. The harbour at dusk, when the light drops and the waterfront fills with people, still feels like a place shaped by movement rather than stillness. That is the country in its most complete form, with its landscapes, people and traditions coming together in one view. A map reveals distance, streets reveal language, water reveals adaptation, and music reveals how a people made belonging out of the act of leaving. Cape Verde does not ask to be reduced to one thing. The postcard was never wrong, it was simply too small. If a nation can live partly through language, sound, and people abroad, where does Cape Verde really end?